Hi, my name's Sue Larkey. Today I want to talk about getting ready for next year. Transition planning is so important for kids on the spectrum. We tend to put a lot of effort into moving from preschool to school, from primary to secondary, but often each year we need to revisit this transition planning. So there are four really important parts to making it a success for transition. The first is preparing the child, the second is preparing the teacher, the third is preparing other staff, and the fourth is actually preparing the parents and giving them the information required. So I just want to talk through each of those areas and also what you can do to help each other through this transition. One of the things that makes kids on the spectrum so interesting for me is they're really adult learners, and when you're thinking about what do you need when you start a new job, this is the stuff kids on the spectrum want to know. Most of you, if you were starting a new job, you'd want to know who your boss was. Well, this kid wants to know who they're reporting to. My guess is if you were starting a new job, you'd actually ask friends or other people, have you worked with that person? What information? Now, neurotypical kids, they actually ask friends. They talk to each other about the next teacher. But many kids on the spectrum don't have that social network to find out about the next teacher. So sending them for visits to meet other teachers is really, really important. If you're not sure who the teacher is for next year, I wouldn't think anything about just sending them up to meet a range of teachers in the school, even if you're not specific who their teacher is. So if you know there's a probability it might be this teacher or this teacher, just send them up to visit that teacher a few times so at least they have an idea of who the teacher is. The other thing that's really, really important is finding out about what uniform the kids are going to wear. Particularly when children move from preschool to school. Often at preschool they've worn their favourite Wiggles hat, and now at the school they're expected to wear a wide brim hat. Or from primary to secondary, often secondary school shirts have a lot of buttons on them. So parents, I'd encourage you to go and buy the uniforms now, the shoes now, the socks, so that you can wash the uniform a few times, soften it up, get them used to it, and the hat, don't put it on all day, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And if they're in preschool, lots of preschools have a getting ready for school where they can wear their new uniform. So if your preschool's not doing it, maybe encourage them to do that. I know my kids love that, where they got to wear their new school uniform for a week to preschool. The other thing with the students, really important to kids on the spectrum, is knowing where the toilets are. And often when kids transition within a school, say from year 2 to year 3, there might be a different toilet block they use or a different playground, and lots of schools have different playgrounds used on different days. Well, you might need to let them know there's going to be a change, where the water is, where the drinks are for there, the closest toilets, and really orientate them. There was a beautiful example that Anna Tullerman, so I've written a number of books with, tells, where a little boy moved from downstairs to upstairs in a building, and he'd never been upstairs, and so for him it was like going to a whole new school, and they had to put in transition for him. One of the things that Anna Tullerman has done is made this fantastic book called I'm Going to School. And many of you would have heard Anna on the live chat that's still up on my website if you missed it, that had quite a lot of ideas for transition. This is for a child going to childcare. It's got photos of the childcare. It's got a Google map showing where the child has to go to school. In here it's also got a map of the classroom, and it shows in nice colours and information. Now this may change, but it just gives them a general idea. There's also photos of the room. Now this is really important. Look how busy this is compared to your home. For many of our kids, stuff hanging down, things on the windows, this isn't something they've experienced before they go to school. And some general information, where to hang their bag. These sorts of things are so helpful. And here's the playground. So you can see that explains where the playground is, where the rooms are. This gives the kid lots of visual information. And these kids are visual learners. The toilets. But what's wonderful about a book like this? They can keep referring back to it. They can keep going back and re-looking at it. Now, Anna would recommend you do this every year, from kindy to year 1, year 2 to year 3, and you can still make something like this for secondary. So that book's called I'm Going to School, and it is on my website if you want to know more about that, I'm Going to School. The other thing with preparing kids with ASD, particularly from preschool to school, and then many kids, the playground at preschool is a very quiet preschool. The preschool I was visiting yesterday, 30 kids, very quiet. But your school might have 800 kids. So over the school holidays, one of the things parents can do is take kids to busy playgrounds where there's lots of kids, lots of noise, lots of activity, and get them used to lots of kids playing on equipment and lots of noise and squealing, more like a primary school playground. And from primary to secondary, I would encourage you to take your kids to a big shopping centre where people are spilling in and out of shopping centres, lots of people walking. This really prepares kids for that secondary school experience where it'll all be quiet and then people will spill out of areas. So this is really good practice for kids getting used to that. Now, teachers. This is really hard. Many schools do not know their teachers in advance. Now, for me, I think it's nearly unfair that teachers don't know they're getting a kid with autism spectrum because, let's face it, preparation is the key. And over January, teachers have more time to gather resources, read information, have a look on my website, whatever. But to spring it on them in the first week in February, that really doesn't give them a lot of preparation, particularly if they've got 30 other kids in the class. So I would encourage schools to select the teacher. Now, once you've selected the teacher, there's a few really quick things you can do to make it a success. First is what I call reverse transition. Actually go and visit the student where they are now. So primary, go to preschool and have a look. Secondary, pop down to the primary school. And primary teachers, just pop into the classroom next door. I honestly believe you can learn more in half an hour visiting a kid than reading realms of documents. Teachers, think of when you're at teachers' college or uni. Do you remember you learnt a lot about teaching? But when you went on your first prac, that's probably when you learnt the most information. So often reading stuff's one thing, but actually meeting the kid, you'll pick up so many subtle things, where they're sitting, who they're engaging with, how the teacher engages them and adapts tasks. So I'd really encourage you to just quickly pop in half an hour. I promise you it'll be worth your while just to gather that information. The other thing for teachers is routines. Kids on the spectrum often have some quirky routines. Yesterday, the little boy I was visiting at preschool, he's only 4, but he likes to be first all the time. Now, the preschool let him go first because it saves the meltdowns, and the other kids are really good with him and even leave a spot for him. So this might be worthwhile to know that that child wants to be first. Now, you might want to change that, and that's fine, but to start off the year, it might be worth letting him or her go first. This same little boy yesterday has a quirky routine where he goes into the office and checks if the photocopier has any paper. Now, if you don't know that and you see this student on the first day running off to the office, would you stop him? Yes. But in the past, he's been allowed to go in there and check the photocopier. So it's important to know if these kids have any little routines, because if you try and stop him going to the office, he's going to get very frustrated, particularly because this student in particular has very limited verbal communication. And these are just his little routines. The first student I taught, Michael, had a little routine where he would come in and touch specific things in the classroom in an order. And if I moved those things, he would get so anxious about them being moved. And guys, this is a matter of choose your battles. Some things, what does it matter? He comes in and touches those 5 things and sits down. My aim is he sits down. Does it matter? He did that on the way. But you can choose the battles that work for you. Classroom placements are really important, and the classroom. I would encourage you to, particularly New South Wales and some other states that have that first teacher development day where you often set up your classroom, to maybe invite the parents to pop in for 5 minutes at the end of that day and just let the students see the classroom, where they're going to sit, where they're going to hang up their bag, without all the kids there. Because on the first day, everybody's anxious, not just the kid with ASD. And I believe these kids have a sixth sense. They pick up on everyone else's anxiety. So if everyone's a little bit anxious and other parents around are anxious, this kid will actually get a bit anxious. But invite them in when it's quiet, they can see what's going to happen. And that 5 minutes will really make the next day much smoother. Of course, you'll need to adapt activities, and when you visit the class, that's helpful, but also maybe ask for a few things to be sent up so you can get an idea. The other thing that I think is really important is what I'd call helpful reports. So in this e-zine, I have attached a couple of really good reports that I'd recommend that you use. They're just 3 of my tip sheets. You can get them on my website at www.suelarkey.com. But the first is the summary profile of the student. And the e-zine that I've sent you today talks through how to fill in this summary profile.